The culture of mediation in Italy, from the 7th century BC to 1861. The first written collection of laws in the Western world is attributed to Zaleuco of Locri Epizephyrii, who lived in the 7th century BC in southern Italy, along the Ionian Sea, then a colony of Greece. It is forbidden to undertake a judgment between two people if conciliation has not been attempted beforehand. In other words, mandatory mediation. 5th century BC, Rome Republic, laws of the 12 tables. Rem ubi pacunt orato. If the parties come to an agreement, the judge issued a sentence. In the Imperial Rome, 5th century AC, there were the defensores civitatum, defenders of the cities, a local, paternal, pacific, trustworthy magistracy invested with a limited civil and penal jurisdiction, which can be said to contain the seed of the modern conciliators. There was, however, a period when the recourse to conciliation was not very well regarded by the legislator. According to Lorenzo Scamuzzi, the Roman Emperor Caligula, not knowing how else to supply the public treasury squandered by his auditors, created a heavy tax on litigation, no less than 40% of the amount in dispute, and consequently, conciliation was considered as a contravention in fraud of the treasury. Taxation, as usual. The Christian religion was born in Palestine but developed in Italy, Rome. In the Gospel, according to Matthew, make an early agreement with your adversary while you are on the road with him, to avoid him giving you up to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be thrown into prison. Paul the Apostle, first letter to the Corinthians. If you are therefore quarreling about things of this world, do you take as judges people without authority in the church, so that there would be no wise person among you who could arbitrate between brother and brother? In the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church often mediated in dispute, both between private individuals at local level and between nations. However, this function was mainly linked to the political prominence of the ecclesiastical institution, as its doctrine emphasized forgiveness rather than conciliation. The Ius Mercatorum, merchant law, which took shape in the territories of the Italian municipalities in the late Middle Ages, 13th, 14th century AC, and then, in the wake of the merchants, spread through various European countries, played a not insignificant role in the settlement of disputes outside the court proceedings. In the event of non-compliance and insolvency, this legislation provided for the bancrum ruptum, bankruptcy, and very heavy financial and personal penalties. But a little pietous compassion, as well as healthy pragmatism, began to make an appearance. In Padua, northern Italy, at the beginning of the 13th century, through the intercession of Blessed Friar Antonio, corporate punishment of bankrupts was replaced by the cessio bonorum, handover of goods. Then, in the various cities, fida, safe conducts, began to be granted more and more. The fugitive or banished bankrupt could re-enter the town without being thrown into prison for a limited period in order to come to an agreement with his creditors. Between the 13th and 18th century, in central and northern Italy, the insolvent debtor and the creditors often regulated their debt and credit relationships by means of private agreements, which were recognized by statutes and, if approved by a qualified majority and under certain circumstances, were effective vis-à-vis other creditors, even if dissenting. In the Venetian Republic, the recourse to agreements of a private nature and their recognition by legislation was even greater. The Republic of Venice, in the north of Italy, can be considered the most important international maritime and financial hub in the 13th and 14th centuries. Excellent shipbuilders, the Arsenale was considered one of the best shipyards in the world, conquerors, but above all, highly business-oriented merchants and negotiators. In the Parte del Maggior Consiglio, the government of the Venetian Republic, on March 28, 1395, it is specified that the fida must be granted if the behavior of the bankrupt is free from malice, if he hands over his books and his belongings. All this without asking the opinion of the creditors and without they being able to oppose it. Moreover, if the parties didn't reach agreement, the sopraconsoli had to ensure that toto suo posse, deponendo ipsum debtor in concordio cum suis creditoribus. The judges had to do everything possible to ensure that debtor and creditors reached an agreement. In other words, court mediation. The rationale of this orientation was quia pium est dare subventionem istis talibus, to help those who were in that situation. However, it is highly probable that, in addition to the aim of helping debtors, the Venetian legislators were trying in every way possible to maintain commercial activity in their territory. The use of negotiation to resolve commercial disputes was therefore the practice in Venice, and this can be deduced not only from the legislation in force in the 13th and 14th century, but also from the content of the play La Bancarotta, The Bankruptcy, 1741, by Carlo Goldoni, a renowned Venetian playwright and lawyer. The excessive duration of trials and the low quality of justice seems to have been a well-known problem in the 16th century Italy. According to Guicciardini, Florence, in fact, I believe that the judgments of the Turks, which are disposed of quickly and almost at random, are not as bad as the banner of the judgments that are commonly used among Christians. Because the length of these judgments matters so much, both for the expensive and for the disturbances that are given to the litigants, that it does not harm, perhaps, that the judgment should be issued in the first day of the trial. If we assume that the judgments of the Turks are given in the dark, it follows that half of them are fair. But they are unfair not less than those given among us, either through the ignorance or the malice of the judges. Generally, there were individuals in charge of maintaining social peace in the communities. In the city of Gavarano, Republic Sania, Central Italy, we want an order that the priors of the Castle of Gavarano are required to elect 2 good and discreet men, to be called Paciari del Comune, village peacemakers. Their job is to settle any disputes and remove any difference that arise or arise for any reason between the individuals of Gavarano, bringing the parties back to harmony, to avoid rancor, enmity, hate, and ill will. In 1770, Pietro Leopoldo, Grand Duke of Tuscany, established in Florence the first chamber of commerce in Italy, in order not to cause the litigants unnecessary expenses and fatiguations. To this end, it will be the duty of the chamber to ensure on all suitable occasions that its chancellors and other ministers intervene with their mediation, in order to suggest amicable settlements to the parties and to facilitate their implementation, especially for cases of small importance. And if this does not take place, the auditor will have to decide these cases as long as they do not exceed the sum of 30 lire. In other words, med then arb. Nothing new. Settlement of disputes outside the courts was quite widespread in Europe. In the 18th century in Holland, it was compulsory for citizens to go before conciliators without the assistance of lawyers before going to ordinary courts. This has been pointed out by the philosopher Voltaire in a letter dated 1745. The best law, the most excellent practice, the most useful I have ever seen, is in Holland. When two men want to dispute against each other, they are obliged to go first to the court of conciliation judges, called peacemakers. If the parties arrive with a lawyer and a prosecutor, the latter first removed, like wood from a fire that is to be put out. The peacemaker says to the parties, "You are great fools to want to consume your money and make each other unhappy. We will accommodate you without costing you anything." If the rage of dispute is too strong in these litigants, they are deferred to another day, so that time may soften the symptoms of their illness. Then the judges send them to a second, a third time. But if the matter is hopeless, they are allowed to plead, just as gangrenous members are abandoned to the amputation of surgeons. Then justice makes its move. This letter seems to have been well known to the members of the Constituent Assembly born out of the French Revolution. Wanting to make a radical change to the legal system, they immediately adopted the idea of a paternal judiciary, which will judge disputes without formality, and also try to maintain peace and harmony by preventing litigation. In 1790, the Justices of Peace were thus established, whose figure was brought to Italy by the Napoleonic armies and, over the years, gave good proof of itself, especially in the kingdom of the Two Sicilies in the south of Italy.